what's good? What's good? Um, this is another one of my little advice. Let me not say advice. These are just opinions, man. Me just talking what's on my mind. I wanted to post today a comment. I'll probably do it when I get home. The most revolutionary thing you can do, or let me just say better, sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is to think. I mean, I know it sounds real easy. I know it sounds like it's nothing, and it's not really considered an action, but it is an action. Just because it's not a physical action doesn't mean it's not an action. And while I was writing, I always have on my top of my desk things that my characters can do. They can feel, they can calculate, they can perceive, they can imagine, they can recall. All these are different things that, when a character walks into a room, they can be doing. And it allows the reader to connect to them. And there's a lot of things that you can do with a written story that you can't really do in a film the same way. Now, Spike Lee and some other storytellers, they have ways of conveying a character's emotions through filming images, but it's really hard to write that out in a screenplay. That's really something that the director brings to it. But that thought came to me. Also, I was listening to a friend of mine's podcast, Ian Burroughs. He got a radio show, and he was talking about. He had a guest on there talking about arming black people for defense. It's not much of a difference than what they were talking about in the South in the 60s and the 50s with the deacons of defense. It wasn't anything more different than what Marcus Garvey talked about, and kind of any progressive person. Any progressive person is doing, would think to do. For black people, especially facing a potential violent threat, right? Or already being in an environment that is violent with the police and other hate groups preying on black people. We don't have a defense group. We don't have a Jewish Defense League or any of those things. All we have is the NAACP. They non-violent. They throwing lawsuits at people, which is good. But when your family has a gun outside and they burning a cross, if they ever bring that part of America's greatness back, what you gonna do? Stand your ground is beautiful if you got a gun. But if you don't have a gun, stand your ground isn't. You can't use stand your ground. So you can't say, get off my property, I'm gonna shoot you if you don't have a gun. So I think that is really a realistic thing, but I think further, and I remember trying to explain my thoughts on this particular real strategy, and I said, that's what I do. I'm a futurist. I think of things, and I play these scenarios out in my books because I think that it's important for us to do that. And also as futurists, writers, sci-fi writers, whatever you want to call it, even if it's Sword and Soul and cyberpunk, any type of sci-fi story can serve as a test drive for social scenarios, just by saying, what if Harriet Tubman had a machine gun? Now that becomes a whole different scenario, and her legacy played out differently serves a purpose to a different time, because many times we look back and we say, yo, we need to do what Frederick Douglass did, or we need to do what Harriet Tubman or Nat Turner did, and then we think about what they did that might have done something wrong, or we may go international and say, what did Mugabe do? What did Gandhi do? Mao, Che, all those different revolutionaries or activists did, and then so as we are thinking about what they did, we sometimes think about how we can apply those things to what we need done now. So then that applying is sci-fi, futuristic, strategizing, or just thinking, right? And so that's how the sci-fi writer mind becomes useful to the revolution, okay? Or to the progression of humanity, or to the struggle, whatever the heck you want to call it, becomes useful, right? So I think sometimes that aspect of the sci-fi writer is underused by the revolution, by the struggle, by humanity, by black people, heck, by Native Americans, or sometimes even by the writer themselves. So I just got that thought, and I wanted to put it out there for us all to, use this medium. I think also I was confronted by a person. I'm not going to say specific because I don't want to touch toes, because I think it's a lot of people. I don't think it's just him, right? But an individual that reads Dr. Ben books, reads Dr. Clark, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, all the different doctors, they're into those, John Jackson, don't Chancellor Williams. Let's not get started on the list. But in terms of revolution, that's what they felt, that's what they read, and that's what they think, is the most progressive thing you can do. I don't know if that's their exact words. Don't let me get it wrong, because like I feel there's a lot of black people that feel that, especially black men, those are the things that we should be reading. You're reading about flying bulletproof men walking through Harlem. What is that all about? That's Luke Cage. You reading about some Force Jedi in space. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's all nothing and nothing. And I got you on that. You know what I'm saying? But then there's the same people that are quick to do an analysis of Avatar, with the blue people. They're quick to talk about the Matrix, talk about we all in the Matrix. So I'm understanding that even they have a element that appreciates sci-fi, but at the same time they treat it in its infancy, or in totality, as if it is something useless, and it's something that has no importance. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to sort of remind us that, just as Spook Who Sat by the Door is a embraced story, there are other stories that can serve our community well. Even sci-fi is not just a leisure, recreational, stress-relieving activity or medium. It is also something that can be used to play out certain scenarios, so that way we can galvanize our people, put people on the same page. If we would have read a book about Trump, potentially it might have made us think of things differently. However, sometimes politics moves so fast, we have so many things going on that nobody, even many of the sci-fi writers, saw something like Trump coming. Now, we may have seen, writers talking about 1984 and V for Vendetta, further down the line, oh, a Hitler is going to come back. But just like immediately, we didn't really play that out, So I say to the people that are talking about armed revolution, and I kind of want to wrap it up because I don't like going too long. How's that going to work out for you? How do you think that's going to happen? If we start killing white people, right, even in defense, you got too many yahoos around the country that are disproportionately outnumber people of color in other parts of the country. And they could easily intimidate and torture black people in certain states. Sure, we could hold Oakland. Sure, we could hold Harlem, Brooklyn, Newark. You know what I'm saying? And I can count the cities because we know them. We could hold certain areas. But what about Iowa? What about Wisconsin? What about, Indiana, Illinois? Sure, we got Chicago, but what about Illinois? Sure, we can hold down certain sections of Atlanta, but what about the rest of Georgia? We can hold down New Orleans, but sure, I don't know. I'm not going to say disarm black people. I would like to found a national black gun education day. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know about pushing it as a armed revolution without strategizing about it. And I don't know who could strategize about it, because they would, form another COINTELPRO if we started talking about some type of armed resistance. So we definitely would have to, and that's another sci-fi thing. If we were to do it, well, that's a sci-fi question. Anytime you ask if, what, all of those things, and what if this goes on, if this happens, that's a sci-fi question. So anyway, I just want to put it out there that, don't disvalue the sci-fi writer as a revolutionary act, because the act of thinking, planning, plotting is the most important aspect of any type of action, revolution, or activity. So thank you very much. That's that. Just got it off my chest. Peace.